morning everyone. What is osteoporosis? How do I get it? And how can I prevent it? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So stay tuned and maybe we'll both learn something because I haven't written a script, so I'm going to be making it up. No. Alright, see you. Okay, so let me tell you a story. Well, first of all, I'm using a new camera today, so I don't know what the sound quality will be like, so I apologise. But a couple of weeks back, I just turned 50, yay! And stupidly I went out for a run in a storm. Remind me to pack trail shoes next time. I've fallen twice, very badly, and winded myself and hurt my wrist and my back. Definitely I'm an old man. I ended up in a field, I had the wrong shoes on, and I slipped in the ice, landed on my back, hurt my wrist. I thought I'd broken something in my back because I could hardly move and I was quite winded. I managed to get up and I managed to keep running for a bit until eventually I had to phone my wife and say, "Come and collect me, I've fallen." Oh my God. And interestingly, I told a GP friend of mine this, and I said, you know, I was out running and I had a fall, and she said, "Oh, you had a fall," which is different from falling. People fall all the time, but having a fall, yeah, that's more like what an old person would say. And I thought, geez, I've just turned 50 and now I've got what's known as a fragility fracture in my back. Now, thankfully, over the next couple of weeks it got better and I probably haven't broken a bone in my back, but it gave me quite a fright. So that has led on to thinking about today's video. But there's a second thing that's just happened a couple of minutes ago, which I'm going to tell you about.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
We've just had Christmas, which was yesterday, and I'm out for a Boxing Day run. And my mother-in-law is staying over. And as I was getting changed to go running in the downstairs toilet, I heard this God almighty clatter and my wife shouting for my son to come and help her. And I thought, God, what's happened out there now? Unfortunately, I was half naked, so I wasn't going to rush out, but it seems my mother-in-law slipped and fallen down the stairs. Now, she's fine and uninjured, got a bit of a fright, but she was blaming it on her glasses and saying she couldn't see the last step and that she slipped. Now, that is fair enough, but the reason that we have falls when we age and are at risk of breaking things is primarily due to a lack of strength and a lack of ability to fight gravity. So it made me think, what would be helpful to try and prevent falls? And that pretty much goes hand in hand with what prevents osteoporosis. So let's talk about osteoporosis and what it is. Listen, this as I say, it's a new camera, voice activated. Clearly it doesn't understand my accent. There'll be lots of me shouting at the camera to stop, and it won't stop. Anyway, osteoporosis, for want of a better description, that's thin bones. It happens to pretty much everyone as we age, and if you lived long enough, you probably would develop osteoporosis at some point. But what we're talking about today is how to prevent it happening too early. So your bones are constantly turning over. You get cells called osteoclasts and they remove bits of bone, and you've got other cells called osteoblasts and they build up your bone. And in medical school I always remembered B for blast and for build, so they build up. I hope I've got that right. If you're a medical student and you're watching this, please correct me in a comment. Anyway, so once we reach a certain age, the osteoclasts start working more than the osteoblasts, and it means that the overall bone turnover becomes a net loss, and as you age your bones become thinner and thinner and thinner. So when their bones are very thin, they become very fragile. When they're very fragile, we're at risk of falling and breaking them. Well, we're at risk of breaking them from falls and other things. But anyway, you can get spontaneous ones in your back, for example. They just happen from sitting down too hard. So that's basically in a nutshell what it is. So what can you do to prevent it? Well, the first and most obvious way to prevent getting osteoporosis, and I should point out all of these are pretty much lifestyle options, but the first one is to have thicker bones. And how do you get thicker bones? Well, if you've ever seen astronauts get off a space landing mission and they get off the Challenger spaceship and they've been in the space station for years, or months anyway, they can hardly walk because they've got muscle wasting, but they've got bone wasting as well. So when there's no gravity, your bones become thin. And if you don't push yourself against gravity, your bones also become thin. So when you see people who run, if you x-ray or scan their back, their lower back bones, the lumbar spine, is usually a lot thicker just from constant impact. So all of the running, Zumba, whatever impact sport you want to do, that builds your bones up. And if you can get those built up in the first 4 to 5 decades of your life, then it means that when they start to go thin, as our hormones change in later life, then you've got a better off starting position. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do exercise as you age, because you're trying to maintain that. And impact exercise and strength work and resistance work at all ages will keep your bone density thicker and will stop it from thinning a faster rate. But importantly, when you do all that work, you also have stronger muscles, which means your power is better, you're less likely to fall. The muscles provide all kinds of other benefits as well, which I'll not cover today, but basically strength, conditioning, impact, all of that stuff, very good for preventing osteoporosis. And the other thing that people always talk about with their bones, you'll know it from when you were a wee kid and your parents said, you need to drink lots of milk. It's good for your bones and it's good for your teeth. But it's not the be all and end all. And actually, calcium, yes, very important. But calcium in milk doesn't have to be the place where you get it. There's calcium in lots of other things as well, which you can certainly look up. Lots of foods contain calcium. And fortunately, milk, cow's milk, is full of things like growth hormone and antibiotics and stuff. So there is a study, I can't remember where I saw it, and I don't know how accurate it is, but it did say that postmenopausal women who are milk drinkers are more likely to have hip fractures as they age, whereas those who are not don't have as many. Now, I don't know if that's to do with the fact that it's the calcium or whether that people who drink milk have a worse diet or something. So I can't really comment on that, but it's food for thought. The second thing you need in your diet is vitamin D. Now, if you live in Scotland like I do, there's no sunshine, and you get your vitamin D from sunshine, from exposure to from your skin to sunshine. You need about an hour a day of face and forearms, and sometimes people don't even leave the house, so that's no use. But you can take a supplement, and there's not many supplements that I would agree with, but vitamin D is one of them. And if you are worried about calcium intake because you're vegan or something like that, then do take a calcium supplement. Or if you drink soya milk or oat milk or something, check that it's got calcium in it, because some of them have added calcium. So that's 2 nutritional options there for helping prevent bone loss. One more, and off the top of my head I can't remember any others. Sure there's tons, but smoking. Smoking is really bad for your bones, and that's the end of the story. Don't smoke. There's not a single benefit to smoking. There was at one point some theoretical improvement in illnesses like inflammatory bowel disease, I think, but the dangers so outweigh any benefit that your inflammatory bowel disease might be better, but your lung cancer will be worse. So just don't ever smoke. It's not good for bones. So what else can you do? Well, apart from lifestyle, there is also your friendly GP. And if you have been diagnosed with osteoporosis, they'll usually come after you and say, you need to take supplements. And they'll give you Well, basically one of two things. You'll get a vitamin D mixed with a calcium tablet, and that's to, well, let me think of your bones as a crunchy bar. They've got, actually that's not a good analogy, think of them as a wall. You've got the bricks, and you've got the mortar, and you've also got the bricklayer. The calcium's the bricks, the vitamin D is the mortar, and then there's this other thing which is called a bisphosphonate, and that's sort of like the builder. That's the thing that puts all the pieces together. So your GP might offer you calcium and also a vitamin D tablet, and also this thing called a bisphosphonate. Now, calcium and vitamin D is fine, but the bisphosphonates have loads of horrible gastric side effects, but sometimes they're necessary and they can actually build your bones up. So if you have a scan after a fracture or something and it says, yep, you've got osteoporosis, which is pathologically thin bones, then you'll get another scan 3 to 5 years later, in some cases 2, but generally 3 to 5, and they'll be checking if the bisphosphonates worked. And if it has worked and your bones are thicker, you'll get to come off that, but they might keep you on your vitamin tablet. There is a possibility your bones are no better, and then you'll stay on it for another 5 years, and at 10 years they'll usually give you what's called a bisphosphonate holiday, and they'll tell you come off, see how you go. Usually at that point people are very elderly, so you want to be giving them as little medications as possible by that stage. Now, the other thing your scan might show is a thing called osteopenia, and osteopenia is thin bones, but maybe I'd call it thinning bones. They're not quite at the point where you're at risk. Well, of course you're still at risk, not as bad a risk. And if you get that diagnosis, you really need to be doing the hard work, the impact exercise, staying away from smoking, lots of calcium in your diet, etc., because they will eventually, in most cases, become osteoporotic. And as I said right at the start of the video, you're at risk of fractures, and that's a problem. I said, how do you know if you've got it as well, which I kind of forgot to go over. Unfortunately, the way that most people know they've got it is they've fallen and broken something, I think beyond the age of 50, which is what got me worried. And at that stage, you get a scan, and the scan will show if you've got osteoporosis. So better do the hard work first, and then your chances of a fall and a break are much less. And then you may never know. And ideally, you'll go to your grave with no broken bones, no bisphosphonates, no vitamin D and calcium, and you'll never have known. But that will only really happen if you're someone who's very active and does lots of good lifestyle practices that prevent thinning of your bones. Now, there's one thing I really do want to say, which I say all the time, is there's no substitute for hard work and avoidance behaviour and thinking, oh, he's told me that if I go out and I slip and I fall, then I'm at risk of breaking a bone, therefore I'm never going to go out, I'm never going to the gym, I'm never going to do any hard work, I'm just going to avoid it all. Well, I'm afraid people have fractures in their house all the time from very simple manoeuvres and very simple slips and falls, and I think that's important. And I'm going to tell you a story an orthopaedic consultant said to a patient when I was in clinic with him 20 years ago. And the patient said she'd, I think, broken her hip from a fall, and she said to the consultant, I'm thinking of moving to a bungalow. And the consultant said, well, if you move to a bungalow, and for any of you who are not familiar with that term, that's a one-storey house. If you move to a bungalow, you'll never walk upstairs ever again. And that's what happens now. Interestingly, my mother-in-law now lives in a bungalow. She used to have stairs, and since she moved to her bungalow, she's had a hip replacement and she's had a fall. Go figure. Anyway, I start again. So I'll leave you with one final thought, Jerry Springer style. Oh dear, whatever happened to him? Anyway, I do get frustrated with apathy, and those are my feelings. No one else needs to feel that way. But there's a few people I know who have signed up for the Edinburgh Marathon relay race, which is amazing. I'm so glad, and I'm really proud of them. We've got 6 months, so let's just see if they're able to commit. But when I was talking to folk about it and trying to rustle up some people, and I'd hear phrases like, oh, you'll not catch me running, or I wouldn't run for a bus, things like that. And as I watch the folk who are saying it, part of me is saying in my head, you're going to become unwell. You might not feel it just now because you're in your 40s and 50s, or in some cases younger, but you're going to end up with osteoporotic back fractures, or wedge compression fractures as they're called, of the spine, a fall with a wrist fracture, a fall with a hip fracture, and they're so common now. And I think, oh, please don't quote me on this, but the mortality rate so the death rate for a hip fracture for someone over the age of 70, I think is 50% within the next 6 months. I mean, it's a huge number of people that break a hip and end up dead within a short period after the hip fracture, because they're just not fit enough to cope. They get infections, their muscle strength is poor, they have another fall, they end up with hospital-acquired pneumonias. So please, 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 at least if you're making a decision not to do the physical activity and not to do the hard work, please do it knowing that you're going to cause yourself problems later on. Okay, sorry, can't even remember where I was ranting. Maybe delete some of that, and I'll just say this. Please, if you're choosing not to do the hard work and not to do impact exercise and all of that stuff, then of course you may end up with a break that can't be helped. Everyone can slip on ice now and again, but you should have an expectation that that's going to happen to you as you age, if you don't look after yourself as best you can for most of your life. And as I've said before in another video, I know I'm going to die one day. I just don't want it to be my fault. So keep up the good work, do all the hard stuff, and you'll reap the benefits. All right, I hope you have a good new year, and I'll see you in 2025. Nice.